What if I told you that no one has ever truly had the power to hurt you, unless you gave it to them? Think about that for a moment. Every insult, every rejection, every betrayal you've ever felt. What if the real source of that pain wasn't the world, but the meaning you attached to it? Stay with me, because once you understand this, you will begin to see your past differently, your present more clearly, and your future with a level of control most people never reach. 1. The illusion of being hurt. There is a subtle but powerful illusion that governs much of human suffering. The belief that the pain we feel is directly caused by the world outside of us. From a young age, we are conditioned to think this way. If someone criticizes us, we feel hurt. If someone leaves us, we feel rejected. If life does not go according to plan, we feel wronged. And so, without ever questioning it, we begin to assume that our emotional state is something shaped and controlled by external events. But this assumption, while common, is deeply misleading. What we often fail to see is that between what happens and how we feel, there is a space, a moment where interpretation occurs. This space is where meaning is assigned. It is where the mind asks, consciously or unconsciously, what does this say about me? And it is in answering that question that pain is either amplified or diminished. Two people can experience the same event. One walks away unaffected while the other carries the weight of it for years. The difference is not the event itself, but the interpretation layered on top of it. When someone disrespects you, the raw event is simple. Words were spoken or actions were taken. But the suffering begins when the mind translates that into something deeper. I am not valued, I am not enough, or I have been diminished. These interpretations feel real, almost inseparable from the event itself, yet they are constructions of the mind. And because they are constructed, they can also be examined, challenged, and ultimately reshaped. The illusion of being hurt lies in this confusion, mistaking the event for the interpretation. When you begin to separate the two, you start to see that what once felt like unavoidable pain is in many cases a result of unconscious judgment. This realization is not meant to invalidate your feelings, but to empower you. Because if interpretation is the source, then awareness becomes the solution. And in that awareness, something shifts. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to question the stories you tell yourself. And slowly, you loosen the grip that external events have on your inner world. The pain does not disappear instantly, but it loses its certainty. It becomes something you can observe rather than something that defines you. 2. The Stoic shift. Reclaiming inner authority. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a principle that is both simple and profoundly demanding. Some things are within your control, and some things are not. While this idea may seem obvious on the surface, truly living by it requires a complete reorientation of how you engage with life. Most people spend their energy trying to control outcomes, other people's behavior, and circumstances that are inherently unpredictable. And when those efforts fail, as they often do, they are left feeling powerless, frustrated, and defeated. The Stoic shift begins when you stop directing your energy outward and start directing it inward. Instead of trying to shape the world to fit your expectations, you begin to shape your response to whatever the world presents. This is not passive acceptance. It is active mastery. It is the decision to focus only on what is truly yours to control. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, and your character. When faced with adversity, the instinctive reaction is often resistance. The mind asks, "Why is this happening to me?" A question that leads nowhere but deeper into frustration. But the Stoic mind replaces this question with a more powerful one. What can I do about this? This shift, though subtle, changes everything. It transforms you from a passive recipient of circumstance into an active participant in your own life. Reclaiming inner authority means recognizing that your emotional state is not something that should be dictated by the unpredictability of the world. It means understanding that while you cannot prevent difficulty, you can determine how deeply it affects you. This realization does not make life easier, but it makes you stronger. It gives you a foundation that is not easily shaken because it is built on something stable, your own discipline and awareness. Over time, this practice reshapes your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who is at the mercy of events, but as someone who can meet those events with clarity and control. Challenges become opportunities to practice resilience. Discomfort becomes a space for growth. And what once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. Not because life has changed, but because you have. 3. Detachment. Seeing without taking it. Personally, one of the most liberating shifts you can experience is the ability to see clearly without immediately taking things personally. For most people, this is incredibly difficult because the mind is wired to interpret events in relation to the self. When something negative happens, the first instinct is to internalize it, to assume that it says something about who you are. But this tendency, while natural, is also the source of much unnecessary suffering. Detachment does not mean indifference or emotional numbness. It means creating space between yourself and the actions of others. It means observing behavior without immediately attaching personal meaning to it. When someone speaks harshly, acts unfairly, or behaves in a way that feels hurtful, detachment allows you to step back and ask a different question. Not, what does this say about me? But, what does this reveal about them? People act according to their own nature, their own experiences, and their own limitations. Their behavior is shaped by factors you may never fully understand. Their upbringing, their beliefs, their insecurities, their internal struggles. When you begin to see this, you realize that most actions are not personal attacks, but expressions of an individual's inner state. And once you see that clearly, the emotional weight of those actions begins to diminish. This clarity does not excuse harmful behavior, nor does it mean you tolerate disrespect. Rather, it allows you to respond from a place of strength rather than reactivity. You are no longer driven by the need to defend your ego or prove your worth. Instead, you act with intention, guided by your values rather than your impulses. Over time, detachment creates a sense of emotional stability that is difficult to disrupt. You become less affected by praise and less wounded by criticism. You engage with others without becoming entangled in their emotional fluctuations. And in doing so, you preserve something incredibly valuable: your inner peace. 4. Emotional discipline, the practice of inner strength. Emotional discipline is not something that develops overnight. It is the result of consistent effort, of repeatedly choosing awareness over reaction, and of learning to sit with discomfort without being controlled by it. In a world that encourages immediate responses and constant stimulation, this kind of discipline is rare, but it is also one of the most powerful forms of strength you can cultivate. Every moment of emotional intensity presents a choice. When anger arises, you can either express it impulsively or pause and examine it. When disappointment appears, you can either dwell on it or redirect your focus. These choices may seem small, but over time they shape your character. They determine whether you become someone who is easily shaken or someone who remains steady under pressure. The key to emotional discipline is not suppression, but understanding. Suppressing emotions only pushes them deeper, where they continue to influence your behavior unconsciously. Understanding, on the other hand, brings them into awareness. It allows you to see them clearly, to question them, and to decide how you want to respond. As you practice this, you begin to notice a shift. The gap between stimulus and response becomes wider. You no longer feel compelled to react immediately. You gain the ability to choose your actions with intention. And in that space, you find freedom. the freedom to act in alignment with your values rather than your impulses. This process is not always comfortable. It requires patience, honesty, and a willingness to confront parts of yourself that you may have avoided. But the reward is significant. You develop a resilience that is not dependent on circumstances. You become someone who can face difficulty without losing composure, who can navigate challenges without being overwhelmed. 5. The freedom of inner independence. There is a profound transformation that occurs when you no longer rely on the external world to define your sense of self. For many people, identity is built on fragile foundations: approval, recognition, success, and the validation of others. While these things can feel meaningful, they are inherently unstable. They can change at any moment, leaving you feeling uncertain and ungrounded. Inner independence is the ability to stand firmly within yourself, regardless of what is happening around you. It is the understanding that your worth is not something that can be granted or taken away by others. It is something that exists independently, rooted in your character, your values, and your actions. When you reach this state, your relationship with the world changes. You no longer seek constant reassurance. You no longer feel threatened by rejection. You engage with others from a place of confidence rather than need. And because of this, your interactions become more genuine, more balanced, and less driven by fear. This does not mean you stop caring about others or withdraw from relationships. On the contrary, it allows you to connect more deeply because your sense of self is no longer at stake. You can appreciate others without depending on them. You can give without expecting, and you can walk away when necessary without feeling diminished. Inner independence brings with it a sense of calm that is difficult to describe. It is not the absence of challenges, but the absence of constant inner conflict. You are no longer pulled in different directions by external forces. You move with clarity, guided by something stable and consistent within you. Conclusion: the belief that others have the power to hurt you is deeply ingrained, reinforced by experience, and accepted without question. But when you begin to examine it, when you look beyond the surface and explore the role your own perception plays, you uncover a different truth. You realize that your inner world is not something fragile that must be protected from others, but something strong that can be shaped and mastered by you. This realization does not remove pain from life, but it transforms your relationship with it. It shifts you from a position of vulnerability to one of strength, and in that shift, you begin to reclaim something that was always yours: control over yourself. If this perspective challenged the way you see pain, take a moment to reflect on where you may still be giving your power away, and how you can begin to take it back, one thought at a time. For more deep insights into discipline, resilience, and mastering your inner world, subscribe to Stoic Thrive and continue building a mindset that remains steady, no matter what life brings. Because in the end, the greatest protection is not found in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself.